Yo, coming at you with the pre-workout preaching session number 2 for the day. I think in totality this is session number 6 of the pre and post workout preaching series that I've been doing. Starting to get to be a little bit nicer weather out here. Everything's about to spring to life, and spring is in the air, and I'm gonna, get a jump on spring, so to speak, and get to work outside. I'm gonna go on a jog around the block. It's the plan, that's the goal for this exercise. But before I go on this adventure, I wanna, converse about a couple things. So I was having a conversation with another person about the potential for ancient peoples to possess knowledge that we ourselves possess today, albeit in a different viewpoint and from another perspective, but in essence understanding and replicating a lot of the same things that we ourselves understand to this day. Now, when we look back on ancient peoples, I think that in a lot of ways they're portrayed as being something that they are not. It's like a caveman, with a club dragging a woman by her hair, or having a rock in his hand and hitting and bashing another rock. Just stupidity, right? And even later on in, let's say, the ancient developing European eras, like the medieval age, where we have these people that are very superstitious. I think that in a lot of ways this is misunderstood. And also in a lot of ways I think that it's biasly portrayed as well. For example, we have a few remaining portrayals of perspectives from peoples during those times. Think about how many people today that you see the world in a different light from. It's probably staggering. And to say that just because this one person saw things this way, and we have record and evidence of them seeing things this way, is directly proportional to everybody else seeing things that way, I think that's a very dangerous road to go down. And, it's always a safe bet to say that there are probably multitudes of different perspectives and viewpoints, probably some not so far from how we ourselves look at the world. And I say we in a very general and obtuse term because obviously today what I just said applies as well. So, going back to ancient peoples being portrayed as something as dumb, right? I mean, even basic animalia pretty much showcase intelligence due to their capability to survive. And there's a gray area in this as well, because there are some instances where certain things have literally become extinct. And it's not necessarily directly related to their intellectual capacity, but by the ferocity of something near them, right? Maybe there's something that's peaceful and likes a peaceful existence, but they are literally brought to the brink and in some cases brought to extinction because they themselves are not willing to compete or be ferocious like those that outcompeted them and ended up forcing them into extinction. So, if we're looking at as intelligence, something which is necessarily just based off of competitive fierceness, and we can bring in compassion and the experience of life into this thing and say that no, I don't necessarily think that it is. And so just to say that something is a surviving being, to say that it showcases intelligence, I think is in a lot of ways incorrect, right? So there's a gray area in that as well, in that statement. Now, that being said, the conversation was kind of going down the lines of, what types of knowledge do we have today that ancient peoples didn't have back in the day? You know what I mean? Like, there are practical examples that there were forward thinkers, like those that had various knowledges in regards to mechanics, medicines, the sciences, astronomy, physics. Even the atom is a philosophical thought postulated by ancient peoples, right? So we have all these things. And we're not necessarily so unique. I think that in a lot of ways, that's just our generational ego speaking and saying, we're better because, this is my time of existence. And so it's like our ego of the generation taking hold and saying, these people were dumb. It's like the story of the Titans, and, every generation overthrows the previous one, so to speak. But, if we kind of put that aside and we look at the greater picture here, I think that we can see that peoples historically, and a lot of other things as well, are a lot more miraculous than, they are portrayed by the masses. So what's one example that I can give? If we look at the foundations of science and philosophy and politics and government, we can actually see that there's a lot of instances throughout history that make a lot more sense if we apply the notion that there were actual people that could go about these things in a rational manner, and they could apply some sort of understanding in the depth that we ourselves understand the world today to the situations back then. For example, church and religion, right? Let's say that, people looked at demons and all of these other things in a lot of the same ways that we ourselves today will look at virus, bacteria, infection, disease, or a psychological defect, right? We're going to actually cure the illness by having people undergo ritualistic behaviors, which in a lot of cases included cleaning up their environment, cleaning up their behavior. And if we look at the governmental systems which were in place, a lot of the things that people did start to make sense. And a lot of the ways in which they were explained make sense as well, because there was an extreme difference of classes. You have to remember this. Some people were literally illiterate, and some people were enveloped in this world of knowledge and literacy. And so when you're going about explaining something to another person, and then what you'll kind of see is the system of beliefs which people held to be true changes in regards to the environment that they were in, right? Nomadic peoples are going to have a different system of beliefs than people that are stationary and that they farm in an area and all these different things. They're going to hold different things to be, in this same instance of superstitious religious exercise. Because in a lot of ways, I think that these things are like internal subconscious, like motives that we ourselves do to overcome the environment and deal with it. That's like the formation and basis of religion. So, the religion kind of changes as we see the cultures change and their habitats and environments change. Different nomadic peoples are going to undergo different practices. So, in essence, different hierarchical systems of peoples would have held a different belief system, which was directly relational to their survival in the area and in their form of civilization. Because, intriguingly enough, the type of civilization at hand is going to, in essence, reflect a lot of other aspects of the culture, the types of buildings, the types of houses that these people lived in, right? And in regards to the types of structures that people lived in, you're going to have different variables be introduced into what could cause them to have a dwindled experience of life. Let's say in a hierarchical system, which, has an ascending ladder of positions and delegates, there's going to be, dark crevices and recesses within homes and all of these different structures and buildings and everything like that, that in essence is going to have a lot more problems compound upon the society and that they're going to have to deal with internally. And to overcome a lot of these things, you have to instill a set practice among the people so that the bad aspects of this stuff, the corruption within the darkness, and I'm speaking kind of metaphorically here about the internalized structure of the society, but then also within like the buildings that these types of societies would have had, where black mold would then become a problem and things to that extent. See, all these other viruses and contagions, and people living in close vicinity and not moving, the sunlight is a natural, antibacterial. Nomadic peoples would have had a different lifestyle and would be dealing with a lot of differing cultures of bacterias and things to that extent. And they wouldn't necessarily have to instill a lot of the practices that a lot of these other people do. Maybe one culture has to bathe more to keep clean and to fend off the demons through baptism, right? And you have all of these laws instilled about chastity and morality and all these other behaviors which are instilled amongst the society. And you have to, expel the demons from somebody who has undergone something traumatic within their life, and they're kind of going down a road of bad behavior, which will internally collapse the society. And it's like a black mold in a dark crevice, festering wound, which the priests then have to go and take care of. And what people misunderstand is this is literally, the forefront of kind of psychology, going and dealing with somebody's mental stability, and they're going through all of these things and they're expressing this behavior and these words and this vocality and this vocabulary, and people are going in there and trying to expel the demons. But in my mind, it's literally like a science. And who's to say that there weren't people back in the day that looked at it the exact same way that I'm looking at it right now? But when you're trying to explain things to a mass of people which are literally illiterate and do not understand a single word about, the complexities of this whole thing that you're going on about, you explain things in a totally different way so that they can conceive and conceptualize about what's going on. So then all of a sudden, representative of what I just spoke about earlier, we have a duality within the culture present itself. Those that understand and see things in this way, and then there are those that understand and see things in this other way. For instance, let's say that there are people which read the signs of the land. Who's to say it's so far-fetched to read the signs of birds and all of these other things going on, when in essence that can give you a, greater picture as to what's going on in the land, off in that landscape. What is it that spooked all of these things? And in essence, you can understand and realize that maybe there's something bigger going on that we need to be aware about. Obviously, a storm is something which you need to be aware about because they can wreak havoc upon a society. It's not necessarily like, like people are looking at things in the way in which we portray them today all the time. I think in a lot of ways, it's just like today. We have the devout religious, which look at things in this manner. And then we have people which, in a lot of ways, understand the necessities of these things within a culture and a society. And so they play the part, they play the role, they understand, and I can say that I've done that in my life, where it's like, in a lot of ways, I think that it's kind of a necessity, a need of these people. And so I just kind of like play along. But I understand that if I'm going to speak to them and get them to do what it is that I want, like a lot of these people had slaves back in the day, and you don't want all these people becoming sick and then infecting everybody else, and then you don't have workers, and it's like a symbiotic relationship here. You have to, in some way or manner, instill the beliefs upon them to keep everything intact and moving and progressing and functioning as a whole unit here, right? And then so all of a sudden, to say that every single person back in ancient Rome looked at, the different deities representing different things, and, we have on record them paying homage to these certain things. To say that they didn't see some political advantage in understanding the power of a corporate entity and being able to influence, and literally the power of the god, so to speak, was manifest by the will of the hierarchy of the structure of the amount of people which literally, pledged themselves to this deity and acted on behalf of this deity. To say that those gods had no power is fallacy. It's wrong. And so to think that there weren't people that thought this way, I think is wrong as well. And to think that there weren't people that thought the other way is wrong as well, because obviously today there are people that think both ways as well. So I just think it's a little, kind of just misportrayed in a lot of people's minds today. And to say that there weren't people that understood about a lot of these things that we understand today. And, there are a lot of different cultures today which understand the intricacies of technology And to say that there weren't people which felt like there was a heightened sense of experience by living a certain way and possibly not utilizing some advanced form of technology that other societies that they knew of existed and coexisted with them during this time, that they willingly and consciously didn't participate in these activities, would also be going against this way of thinking as well, because today we have prime examples of that all across the world. And that's just kind of my thoughts on the whole deal. I have a lot more thoughts on all this stuff, but anyways, I'm about to go and jog. What's up? Just got done with my second exercise for this 2-a-day routine. Whew. Such a different experience out jogging on, the terrain outside rather than an enclosed and controlled environment. But I had some time to kind of mull over what it was that I said earlier, and I stand by a lot of what it is that I said, but I just kind of wanted to add a few more things before I close this post-workout preaching session here. I think in a lot of ways people don't understand that life needs this color, needs this sense of magic and mystery. And in a lot of ways, I think historically people always try to give things life by giving them humanistic characteristics. And then in a lot of ways, it's taken to the extreme in some circumstances, It's supposed to be a lighthearted gesture at kind of our attempt to paint the world in the way in which it should be in some sense, but more so how we want it to be, and to give it this magic and mystery. And then also, the higher you delve into the scientific field, you're going to uncover and unlock a lot of things that open up the possibilities for maybe some of this, magical stuff to actually have real substance. This mystery that was there before is all of a sudden no longer magical, but it's scientific. We learn about the law of thermodynamics and how all this is just a fluid motion of just kind of reaction and kind of a cycle of incorporation and then exhalation, right? Where there's a change in pressure of information and a shock wave of all this going on, throughout reality. And the shock wave was always present and will always be present. So who's to say that throughout time there aren't people that are so in tune with the feeling of the universe that they themselves are susceptible and able to pick up or perceive the fluctuations in it. I'll leave you with that, and see y'all next time.